If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Alrighty. Good morning and welcome to this edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Contact number is 516-453-9921, or you could Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, @gmail.com. And hopefully I will get to your Gmail at some point in time. All the books are in, and let's have a good show. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. Starting off today's program with what was said on page 171, 172 of the revised code, which is, you mentioned every day, all day, wherever you are, ask yourself these 4 basic questions. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do what I want to do? How do I plan to do what I want to do? And 4th, what do I expect the constructive result to be? Mr. Fuller, you said we should do this every day. Even to call into this program, what do you want to do? Why? You put that in there. Can you give an explanation to, particularly to those who are new to the program? What do you mean when you put that in there, the 4 ones?
Because every creature that is what we call, quote, unquote, alive, wants to do something if that creature is not asleep, what we call in bed or asleep. Anytime you are awake, every creature, every person, every rabbit, every alligator, every elephant wants to do something minute by minute. Every bird sitting on a limb or in the sky wants to do something. And if that bird is in the sky, on the wing, you might say, flying, or maybe above the clouds, that's what that bird wants to do. You look out the airplane window, you see the bird. The airplane is flying above the clouds, and the bird is flying above the clouds. The pilot in the airplane wants to do something. You want to do something, and you're doing it at the time, or you wouldn't be on the airplane. And you're looking out the window at the bird. That's something you want to do if you're fixated on the bird. And that bird wants to do something. That's why it's flying above the clouds. It's a single bird alone. It's not in a pack. It's not following anybody. The bird knows what it wants to do because that bird is doing what it wants to do at that moment. Just like the pilot of the airplane, all of the passengers on the airplane that you're in, and you yourself. As you have a destination, you also want to look out the window rather than read a book. And you want to fixate on the bird, which is why you keep watching that bird. And so every creature wants to do something all of the time if it's not asleep. So you make sure that whatever it is you want to do, and that's where codification kicks in. You keep in mind that whatever it is you want to do from 1 minute to the next is going to do what? Under the law of compensation. Produce a constructive result. No matter what it is you want to do or why you want to do it or how you plan to do it, the bottom line is this thing you want to do, how is it all going to play out in the end if you do it? Is it going to produce a constructive result? If a person is on the Capitol steps in Washington, D.C., with a flag in his or her hand, they want to do something. They came there. It's something they want to do. This person, rather. He or she, or whomever. And the person is doing it. They left someplace in what they call Nebraska. They came to the Capitol steps. Flag flying on a flagpole. They're carrying it. And they want to do something. What is it that I want to do? That's what they have asked themselves. I want to go to the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. I'm going to go, and I'm going to get there. And there's something I want to do when I get there. And that's carry this flag and go up those steps. Now, that flag is on a pole. I'm going to wave that flag. That's what I'm going to do to start with. And now I think that since I'm up here now and I'm waving this flag, I might want to do something else. I'm going to add to my itinerary. May not have planned this, even though you should have. And you should have thought about the repercussions, too. You should have thought about what the constructive result was going to be of this venture. And maybe you did. Maybe you knew what the constructive result in your mind, what was going to be constructive, was going to come out of it. But it's something you wanted to do. That's why you're doing it. You could have just walked off. You could have just got halfway there and say, you know what, I think I'll just go somewhere and put this flag, particularly with the stars and bars on it, in a trash can, or hand it to somebody else, or just throw it down on the ground, and go get a sandwich, and then go get on a bus and go home to Nebraska. But that's not what I want to do. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to use this flagpole to knock out a window. And then I'm going through that window. And once I get in there, my plan is I'm going to chase everybody I can with that flag and that flagpole. Or, if that doesn't work out too well, I got a backup. I got a 9mm up under this bulletproof vest. 9mm pistol. And if it comes with that, I'm ready to use it. Now, that might be what that person had planned and prepared for. If the person is carrying the gun and the flag and the flagpole, and they broke the window and went through it, well, looks like that's what they wanted to do. Why? Because that's what they're doing. So somebody else somewhere else may sympathize with those people doing that same thing. They didn't go nowhere. They said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I see it on TV. I'm going to watch TV, and I'm going to cheer it on like I'm watching a ball game. So that's what the person did. So what is the constructive result going to be? Well, everybody can make their own conclusion about that. But I think some of those people who made that choice say, I don't think this worked out too well. At least some of them. Others might say, yeah, If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it, and even more. I regret that I didn't do more. I didn't hurt enough people. It comes down to what? W-A-N-T. What do you want? Everybody wants to do something. But always think about whatever it is that you want to do. Homeboy might want to, put a couple of pistols on in his belt today and go to school or go down to the place where he usually hangs out and look around for somebody who might have a gang signal on him and walk up to him and shoot him in the back of the head and run. That's what he wants to do. And tomorrow's paper will show that somebody did it. Now, what is the constructive result? That's the bottom line for every move that everybody makes. This thing you want to do, open a business or whatever, what do you think the constructive result's going to be? You can open a business selling vegetarian sandwiches. Or you can open a business saying you're going to sell cocaine. But what is the constructive result going to be? What do you expect it to be? 10 years down the road, what is all this going to look like? Keep that in mind. That's why that's in the textbook.
Okay.
Those 4 wants. Always think about that, in that sequence. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? You should have a plan. And what do I expect the constructive result to be?
Okay. That's going to be the focus of our conversation today, the 4 wants. Even when you make this phone call, what do you want to do when you made the phone call? Ask yourself those 4 questions logically. Ask yourself that. Okay. See, of note here, I was just told that the website is having some problems, so you may have problems in connecting to it, but the technicians are working on it. And then number 2, I was told that on a correction, the correction is by Daryl. He told me that, Mr. Bobby, first of all, I want to correct you on the title of the broadcast that Mr. Fuller and Dr. Randy Short appeared on the summer of 2019. It is not Hot Air or Hot Fire. It is entitled Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. and Dr. Randy Short, quote, "We need results, not more hot air," end of quote. You can find it on the YouTube channel on the TPIM, True Power is Mine channel. Okay, there you go, Daryl. Got it in. Okay, here's the number, 516-453-9921. You can call, depress the number 1 button, and you'll be in line. And then Gmail, number 7, Mr. Bobby, numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to the 832 zip code. Everett, you thought about it. What do you want? Here you go. You are on. Go ahead, Everett.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr.
Morning.
Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir. My question is following with the 4 wants. I want to know, with all the riots that have been happening for the past week, I've been hearing this word called white privilege. What I want to know is white privilege the same thing as white supremacy?
Depends on who you ask. See, all words, according to the counter-racist code, should be explained by the user of the words. Words are nothing but tools. Like you go to a toolbox and you say, well, the job that I'm going to do, first of all, is going to call for a saw. I'm going to saw some wood. So I'll look in the toolbox. So if you're going to saw, some wood, there's a tool called a saw, S-A-W. And you look for that tool rather than a hammer, which is also in that toolbox. But that's not what you're looking for. You're moving everything out. You might have dozens of tools in there. It might be a huge toolbox. And you've got screwdrivers, you've got wrenches, you've got a little of everything in there. But you are looking for a specific tool. And you're looking for a saw because you're going to saw wood. You're not going to use a hammer. You're going to saw some wood. So that's what you choose. Now, it's the same way with words. If somebody says white privilege, whomever is using the term and saying, well, I believe in white privilege, use that as an example, then you simply, according to the code, you just ask the person who is using the term. Well, wait a minute, you say you believe in white privilege. Well, the first question might be a dozen questions after that, maybe 3 dozen. But the first question is, what is white privilege, sir or ma'am? All right? What do you mean? Not what the person down the block means. The person overseas means. The person up in the airplane. The person down in the mines. What does that person mean? No. Not even what I mean, or what I think I mean, or what I interpret it as being and say that's what it is. But what the person who is using the term says that it is, that's what it is. Because a word is nothing but a tool. You can hang any kind of definition on it you want. A tool can be used all kinds of ways. And a word can be used all kinds of ways, too. Particularly, the English language is very, very, very flexible. People will say in a court of law, they said, yeah, that's what I said, but that's not what I meant. I mean, you're giving a meaning to it that I didn't have no intention of meaning that at all. Because, I mean, I wasn't going by no dictionary definition. I was going by my definition. And you didn't ask me what that definition was. And the person has a point there. So you always make it very, the codified compensatory procedure is whomever is using the term should explain what it means. And if they don't, and you're getting confused about what it means, you ask the person who is using it. I don't want to interrupt you, sir, but before we get too far down the road with what you're talking about, I'd like to know, what do you mean when you say white privilege, as an example?
Okay.
Do you understand what I just said?
Okay. All right, Everett. There you go.
No,
right.
I was
Mr.
asking,
Fuller, were you asking him a question?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Hold tight.
Sometimes Neely Fuller is asked a question, but his answer is not in line with the question at all. I'm quite sure, Mr. Barber, that you have encountered that, or somebody said that to you. He didn't answer my question. So I want to make sure that I'm answering people's questions. That's what I'm here for.
Okay. Go ahead, Everett. Did he answer your question?
Sir. Yes, sir. You didn't ask my question, just a VGQ. I believe they should have said white supremacy rather than white privilege. Call it what it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Everett. And you know the rule. Don't be a stranger, my brother. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, Mr. Fuller. This comes from the chat room. It says, good morning to you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you for what you do. Starting on page 298 of the 2016 Code Book, there are 130 questions that victims should ask before the first act of sexual intercourse or sexual play with another non-white person. My question, Mr. Fuller, is what is a black male supposed to do when he was not in a codified state at the beginning of the relationship with a black female, But now he is full of regret with the black female. She lied about her sexual past. She's argumentative, not very intelligent, etc. He is now married to. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. What do I do?
Well, anything that starts off with falsehood, the code is all about a major word in the code is truth about everything. Truth plus justice plus correctness, according to the code, those three things equal peace, quote unquote. We don't know what peace is like because in recorded history the world has never produced it. But you start with the truth. You can't have peace as an end product. That's not possible without first revealing truth. When you say truth, you mean truth meaning what? That which is. You reveal that which is. That if something happened, you reveal that. As so that everybody understands that the sequence of events, that anything that happens, it happened. And people should know the truth about that. And particularly if they think that it's important to know, either then or later on. And so if someone is concealing the truth, hiding the truth, or even revealing a falsehood, deliberately saying something that they know is not true, but making the other person think that what they're saying is true, then that's disaster in the making, right from the beginning. That's in anything. So in so-called relationships, all truth must be revealed before the first act of sexual intercourse in what you call a sexual relationship, male and female. If they're going to be engaging in that type of activity, before the first incident, according to the code, everything that you can think of that you've ever done or even thought about doing and didn't do it, but you thought about doing it, should be revealed if the other person thinks that it's important for them to know this. Otherwise, you're in a toxic situation, which you're going to be in a toxic situation anyway. If you are non-white, black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, in the system of white supremacy, you don't expect any so-called relationship to be as it should be. Why? Because the system of white supremacy, first of all, is not going to allow it. If you're a black person in a so-called relationship with anybody, or going to be in one, that relationship is going to be toxic. So you just accept that. So in answer to this question specifically, if the person lied about a lot of things, and then later on the truth was revealed, and you're well into the relationship, then the law of compensation, that's part of the title of the book, says, okay, salvage job, because that's where you are now. Can I take all of those minuses that were not revealed in the beginning and look at all of those minuses and add them up, everything that was toxic, everything that I should have known and didn't know that was revealed later on. You didn't tell me that you were on parole, or you didn't tell me that you had been married 3 times before and never got a divorce from anybody all 3 times, or whatever it was, that you did time for triple murder of someone of the opposite sex. You didn't tell me that your last 3 quote-unquote relationships ended in disaster. And the disaster was you killed all 3 people that you were involved in. You didn't tell me that. You didn't tell me that. A smart lawyer got you off, but you didn't tell me you did these things or had been charged with doing these things. Okay? Now it all comes out 3 years down the road into the so-called relationship. So, in answer to the question, the code says now you're in salvage mode. So you look at all of the minuses that were in the past, and then you look at the pluses that attracted you to what you thought you had in the beginning, and see if there's anything you can salvage. And if there's anything you can salvage out of it, say, well, yeah, you told me just about everything you told me when you met me was a lie. All right? You told me you had a job. You told me this. You told me that. You told me that, you did, you were a magistrate in London and whatnot. You've never been to England. You told me all of that. Told me where you were born, and you wasn't born nowhere near that place. So now you look at it, and you say, now, I'm looking at you. Now, with all these lies, do you have any pluses? And if the pluses outweigh the minuses, according to the code, you keep going with it. Because you're not going to get perfection in any relationship anyway. The white supremacists, if you're black and you're on this planet, the white supremacists are not going to allow for what you call a perfect relationship or anything close to it. Every relationship is going to be toxic when it comes to black people. But it's just a matter of how much poison is going to be in it. And if you can stand the poison, what they call the bitter with the sweet, there's a song about that, sung by Bill Eckstein, I think, taking the bitter with the sweet. So you just measure it and see, getting back to those wants again, if you want enough of that sweet that'll drown out that bitter. And if the answer is yes, just be honest with yourself and the other person, then hang in there as best you can. Since you're saddled now, quote unquote, with the situation. But if you just can't stand it, then you let the other person know that. Well, doesn't seem like this is going anywhere. I'm never going to be satisfied with this. I'm going to keep bringing it up. And I know that. And you're not going to like it because I keep bringing it up. So it's just best we get this over with now rather than drag it around and then try to get it over with later. Because I can see that this is never going to work. All right. So you're out.
Okay. Got to cut in for a break, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, Naran, for your question. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for your answer. And he says thank you. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we're happy to have you. You can call in by this number here, 516-453-9921. Gmail, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. It will not be read today, but you can certainly do that, and at some point in time I will do that. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your calls, and we'll try to get as many in as we can now. 516-453-9921 is the number to call in. Make sure you press the number 1 button. JJ from the chat room, you were correct. Phone lines are off the hook. You were correct on that. All righty. Let's see. Let's do this Gmail, let's do this phone call, and then we'll do a Gmail. Let's go to the 717 area. That will be Darnell from Pennsylvania. Okay, Darnell, dealing with the wants today. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
I don't have a question today. I just have a VGQ.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I noticed that people call in and they tell you, Mr. Bobby, that they have a VGQ in the question, and then they just proceed without waiting for you to let them know if you have enough time in the show for them to properly be able to answer, like Mr. Fuller to answer the question and for them to state the VGQ. And I don't think that's constructive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Darnell. And I want to tell you, don't be a stranger. All right, everybody that heard that, take heed to that. Again, deal with the 4 wants. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Page 171, as Mr. Fuller started out, will tell you that. Be honest with yourself and do it according to logic. Okay, Mr. Fuller, this comes from the Gmail. This comes from Jakari. He says this, Mr. Fuller, can you ask Mr. Fuller why he says everything bad that happens to black people is a fault of white supremacists when most of it is really our fault because we never develop a code, and when we do, we don't stay on it. Thank you.
And that's the question?
Yeah, he says, can you ask Mr. Fuller why he says everything bad that happens to black people is the fault of the white supremacists when most of it is really our fault because we never develop, and when we do, we don't stay on it.
Well, we're prisoners of war. That's the analogy I like to use, and it's true. It's also true. We're war prisoners. We're born in prison. That's why we're not doing the things we ought to be doing. We were in an illegitimate war that was declared on us. We didn't declare any war according to all of the recorded history. Black people didn't declare war on white people. The white supremacists declared war on people of color. They came up with a concept called white supremacy, and they evolved it into a very, very, very robust and scientific, powerful system, the most powerful religious system and political system ever thought up in the minds of people in recorded history. So they fanned out all over the world, and it spread very robustly, and it took root, and it grew, and it's huge. Nothing like it has ever been thought of before. Nothing has ever, no religion, no political system has ever been as powerful as the system of white supremacy. So the black people who are on the planet now were born in captivity, since the original, our ancestors, are all dead now, because that was a long time ago. So when you are born in prison, you can just look at what prisoners do. In the average prison, they sit around doing a whole lot of nothing. And when they do something, it's usually something that's very, very trivial, because they're not allowed to do anything really important. In most prison systems, if people would tell you who have been in prison, how did you spend your time? Well, you spent your time supporting the system that you were in, meaning you went out on a road gang or something like that, and just doing what you were told. And a whole lot of time, you just what they call doing time, which is what black people throughout the planet here in 2021 do now. Just sit around waiting on the white supremacists to tell them what to do. Because when you're in prison, that's what you have to do. And so we don't do much of anything. And when we do something on our own, when we come up with some scheme or some type, it usually has something to do with something non-constructive. Smuggling drugs into the prison and playing little child games in the prison. Go out and play some stickball or something like that, shoot marbles. Like I think Eldridge Cleaver talked about how fascinated he was and somewhat taken aback with the marble players of, I think it was Folsom Prison. He wrote a book called Soul on Ice, meaning he was the person who was in prison, I think. I think that's what the title of the book meant.
Yes, Soul on Ice, yes.
Right. And he said that he used to look at those very elderly prisoners who intensely look forward to shooting marbles, just like 5-year-olds or 7-year-olds. And here are people who are 40 and 50, and they look forward and arguing about the marble game, and the marble game is a huge thing. I mean, and in a way of speaking, he was saying he could see what being in prison would be like over a period of time. First of all, you're doing these little trivial things, and so little childish games become very important. Little small things become very important. And here are some people who are arguing about marbles, getting in fights about some marbles, and you might even say, even though I don't think Elder Scleeper said that, Mr. Elder Scleeper, but it's a sign that you have lost your marbles. You're out there fighting somebody about a marble game. And there's no money even involved. You're just playing marbles and fighting about a marble game, which is exactly what, in a greater context, the black people of this planet are actually doing. We fight about absolutely nothing at all, but that's what prisoners do. Why? They're just sitting around looking at each other, and they decide that this is an ugly situation. Now, what makes for an ugly situation? Well, the situation is ugly, so the people who are in the situation are ugly. And who's in the situation? Well, me and all these other ugly people. So I don't like ugly. So I'll fight myself and fight everybody else that looks like me. Because I'm not going to fight the prison master, because I know that's going to be a losing thing. And that's what black people do right here in 2021 all over the planet as we speak right now. Mm-hmm. We make a big thing out of little things that don't matter. And we fight each other because that's what prisoners do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, I got a question. Did I answer the question?
Well, it was a Gmail, so I'm suffice that you did. So let's move on. Yeah, you answered the question.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, let's go to the DMV. For those of you who do not know that, Delaware, Virginia, and Maryland. And we have Andrea from Washington, D.C. Good morning, Andrea, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Peace, Mr. Bobby. It's Andre. It's a pleasure.
Oh, Andre. Okay. I'm sorry, Andre. Go ahead.
Oh, no need to apologize. I was going to say thank you to Mr. Fuller and thank you, Mr. Bobby, for your kind words and awesome effort. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll jump right into my question. Last week, Mr. Fuller mentioned that there were some things he would like to do, before he transitions. And I just want to know what are the first thing that comes to mind he would like to do, so maybe we can accomplish it for him. If he has time, a couple others. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fuller.
Here again, sometimes I'm slow on picking up the question.
Okay, Andre, go ahead.
Could you ask that again?
That?
Yes, I do apologize. Mr. Fuller, last week's call, you mentioned there were some things that you would like to accomplish, and I would like to know what are some of those things so that maybe some of us can pick them up and carry them forward.
Oh, I'd like to accomplish getting rid of the system of white supremacy before I leave here. That's what I started out to do, and I'm going to leave here a failure at that, according to the way things are going. But hopefully, I hope I will leave an outline that I think can be followed that will produce the constructive effect, meaning get that job done. There's no point in trying to do a job that's not going to get done or can't be done. I've heard people say, well, the race problem can't be solved. Well, in fact, someone told me years ago, Fuller, you're talking about solving the race problem. Let me tell you something. You got to wake up, man. The race problem can't be solved. It can only be discussed. And so I thought about that, because when people tell me things, I think about what they're saying. And then I came to the logical conclusion, I think it's logical, that if you are going to discuss a problem, that can't be solved, there's no point in discussing it. Why waste time discussing something that can't be done? That's impossible to be done. But I came to the conclusion that that's not true. And how did I come to that conclusion? How did I arrive at that conclusion? People made racism. And I came to the conclusion a long time ago that anything that people put together, people can take apart. Now, if it's put together by some force greater than people, like the Creator, what we call all power, Allah, God, the Great Spirit, got different names. Now, that might be a different proposition and most likely is, logically speaking. But if people put it together, people can take it apart. Whether it's an automobile or a scooter or a towering building going way up above the clouds. People put it together, people can take it apart. We have seen plenty of evidence of that. People have put together great ships. One ship, many years ago, I think they made several movies about it, called the Titanic. And even though people didn't take it apart, it came apart. People caused it to be taken apart by hitting an iceberg. And the mathematics of it, since it was made by people, even though they said, hey, this ship is unsinkable. It was called the Titanic. And on its first voyage, the first time it went to sea, with a lot of wealthy people on it and a lot of other people who weren't wealthy, who suffered because they weren't wealthy, who were down at the bottom of the ship, that so-called class system. Okay? So it went out on the ocean. Everybody partying, having a grand old time. Very unfortunate situation. And it was advertised as being unsinkable. Like we say, the system, some of us say, the system of white supremacy. There's no way for it to come apart. No way. It's just too strong. It's too powerful. It's too firmly rooted. That's what they said about the Titanic. The Titanic went down the first time it was out. Hit that iceberg, and because of the mathematics, the logic of the universe, it kicked in. And the way the ship was built, and the way it hit that iceberg at a certain angle, mathematically, the person, one of the engineers on the ship, according to the way the story went to the captain and said, you know, the ship is still going. You know, we hit that iceberg, but hey, I mean, the Titanic is built to last forever. It's unsinkable. Nothing can sink it. So we can just keep going. And it was going, steady. Everything nice and calm. But one of the engineers said, you know what? The way that hole is in this ship right now is slowly sinking. And within a few hours, it was at the bottom of the ocean. Very unfortunate situation. Over 1,000 people, I don't remember exactly the number, but over 1,000 perished on the first voyage out, an unsinkable ship. Now, I went a long way around to make that illustration about the system of white supremacy. Yes, unsinkable. The Titanic, a social Titanic, a religious Titanic, most powerful system ever thought up in the minds of people. But it has corruption right in it, built into it, because the system itself is entirely corrupt. Because it's based on what? Mistreating people based on color. That's all that it is. That's the purpose for it. Dominating and mistreating people based on color. And even though it produces many material things, many material things, and in rapid fashion. I mean, all kinds of knowledge and understanding and inventions comes out of the system of white supremacy, more than ever before in history by anybody else. So a lot of people have said, and I've even thought about it, since the system of white supremacy is so materially productive, nobody produces things like the white supremacists do. Well, even though it's painful, we ain't got nothing better. And the white supremacists themselves say that. They brag about it when they argue with black people. They say, okay, you black people think y'all so smart. How come y'all haven't come up with nothing? Now, we came up with the system of white supremacy. It's running smoothly. It's unsinkable. And you enjoy a whole lot of the bling-bling and everything else that this system produces. So shut up and enjoy it, your slave position in this system. So that's an argument that, people should think about. All points of view should be thought about. But any system, regardless of the material things that it produces, and the white supremacists are better at producing material things than anybody, if we tell the truth. But what's wrong with it? It destroys millions of people in the process. And people are very important. Black lives are supposed to matter, even though they don't matter in a practical sense. They're throwaway people. And there's no such thing as throwaway people. According to what? According to the logic of the universe. Whatever created this universe did not make people. People are very important, regardless of the color of the skin. The color of the skin of people is there because it's supposed to be there. And anybody who starts talking about, well, you're fine as a person, but you got the incorrect color. No. I don't have no incorrect color. That's you talking. You can't make that judgment. And if you do make that judgment, your system is in error. Your system is in error because whatever made you put color in my skin. So you got a problem with that. You don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with whatever made me. And that's serious. So I'm supposed to remind you of that. And I'm supposed to come at you full force. You are going to persecute me on account of the color of my skin because you say I'm the wrong color? It doesn't make sense. There's nothing logical about it. And I'm supposed to fight it tooth and nail. I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm not proud of it. And I'm not ashamed of it. No more than I'm proud of having an ear or a nose or an eye. I'm not proud of having eyes. I didn't have anything to do with that. And I'm not ashamed of having eyes. I think eyes are fine. Noses are fine. Ears are fine. They do wonderful things. I can hear music with these ears. I can hear a lot of things. I like hearing. I don't like not being able to hear. I like being able to hear. You got a problem with me hearing? And then you got a problem with the color of my skin? You got a problem with the shape of my nose? You got a lot of serious problems, and you trying to give your problem to me, and I ain't buying it. Now, that's the counter-racist code.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, very good, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, Andre, and don't be a stranger. Okay, now, for those who are new to the program, Mr. Fuller has written a book called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, and you can get that book and all that he has been discussing at producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And all it is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. One more time, producejustice.com. untitled.com, and you can follow along with what Mr. Fuller is saying. If it's relevant to you, good. If it's not, well, that's okay too. But get that publication at producejustice.com. You want to add anything before we move on, Mr. Fuller?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Except I want to add a footnote to what
Okay.
I just did. I did a little bit of preaching there, and the code is never supposed to be preached. It's just supposed to be told and talked about in a calm manner. That's one thing. I'm always saying I'm still learning. That's one thing I'm still working on. I have a tendency to start getting on a soapbox. I'm not supposed to do that ever.
Okay, well, we all make mistakes, so don't worry about that, Mr. Fuller. All of us really are still learning. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Let's go way down in Georgia on the 646. It says Raymond here. Let's see, Raymond, I think we got you on here. Raymond, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Bobby. Good morning.
Okay, Raymond, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a VGQ for Mr. Fuller.
Okay.
Based on the recent riot, my VGQ is that those white people are just like the black people because the results still remain the same. The election doesn't change or anything. And my question is to Mr. Fuller is, do you think those white people are just like the black people because the election doesn't really change, or the government, Biden's still the president, so they only do the same thing like what black people would do if they were rioting or like demonstrating? So if they just based on the three people in the world, which is white supremacy, white people, and non-white, are those bunch of people just white people?
Wait a minute. Was that a question?
Yes, Mr. Fuller. The people that do the riot, are they just simple white people, mad, or it's just a mix of like white supremacy along with white people? Because the result is still the same. The election didn't change, or the president didn't change. So I'm saying they still get the same result as any black people demonstrating.
Yes, I think you speak with an accent, and that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, I'm originally from Jamaica, yeah.
Yes, but I don't know. I can't understand the question, and
all right.
that's.
Let me slow down the question.
One thing is my hearing is not up to par, and the other thing is my understanding of questions sometimes. That's just a fault of mine, a huge flaw on my part. When I ask people, they ask me questions. And so sometimes, if the question is not kindergarten simplistic, I sometimes cannot comprehend the question. That's a huge flaw on my part for somebody to be on the air.
No problem. All right, let me go back. Based on the people you said in the world, white supremacy, white people, and non-white people, are all those based on the riot now, are all those people that was in the riot, are they considered as just white people or white supremacists?
Okay. Ms. Fuller, did you understand that? The people in the riot, were they considered white people or white supremacists?
Oh, I don't know individually. See, that's an individual thing. But what the code says, if a person is classified as white, all right, now this is clear. If, in the system of white supremacy, a person is classified as white and functions as white and say that they are white and put it on paper that they are white and they are known to be white and treated as white people, then that person, to a victim of white supremacy, should be suspected of being a white supremacist if that white person is able to be a white supremacist. That's it. That's code. You have a duty. If you are classified as non-white, black, brown, red, quote, unquote, beige, tan, a person of color, quote unquote, if you are classified as that in the system of white supremacy, according to codified logic, you are duty bound to suspect that any person who is classified as white and who is able, underline able, to practice white supremacy should be suspected of being a white supremacist until proven not to be.
Okay.
Why? Because there's no master list, as far as I know, of who is a white supremacist and who is not. So in a system of white supremacists, somebody's got to be a white supremacist. So you suspect everybody who is white until that person proves that he or she isn't. Now, prove it to whom? Prove it to you as an individual, because proving it to somebody else won't fly. It's a real difficult job.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. And thank you, Raymond from Georgia. Let me do this, and don't be a stranger. Let me do this quickly, Mr. Fuller, before the hour runs out here. Isn't that it? I just lost my page here. Okay, let me see if I can get it right back. Okay, real quick, Mr. Fuller, answer this. This comes from Afroastrology. Says this. Mr. Fuller, has Mr. Fuller ever heard of the Black Boule? If so, what does he think of them, and should we consider them white supremacists? They are a group of upper-class blacks and tell white supremacists how best to keep blacks programmed and brainwashed in exchange for a lavish lifestyle. We only got about 2 minutes, Mr. Fuller. Can you address that, please?
Well, I'll go back to the prison analogy right quick. Let's just say that somebody is running around in the prison calling themselves the Black Boule, Black Anglo-Saxon, Black Bourgeoisie. I mean, these are different terms that have been used down through the years. That we are special blacks. Well, people can do that. But, okay, you're Black Boule, you're Black this and Black that. You're a prisoner of war in the system of white supremacy. You're classified as black. And that's it right out of the gate. Classified as a person of color. Doesn't make any difference what shade of color. You got color. You got color in your skin. Or you got the label that you have color. Because a lot of black people look exactly like white people. But if they got the label that says they're black or a person of color, that's who they are. And so what they are is victims of white supremacy. So it doesn't make any difference what they call themselves. It's what they are to the white supremacists. That's the thing that counts. And the white supremacist says there's one size fits all, and it's called the N-word.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Got to leave it there. Listen, that's the end of the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all your calls. I mean, you have really jammed up the phone line. That's a good thing. Thank you for all the chat room. Thank you for the Gmails. All that and more. We're going to end the first hour. But if you have to go, thank you. Hopefully we'll hear from you next week. But for those of you who are going to stay on for the second hour, stay on for the second hour. It should be dynamite. Thank you again. You've been listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. right here on blogtalkradio.com. All righty. Welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. If you have any questions for Mr. Fuller, you can get your phone together and call this number, 516-453-9921. If you have a Gmail, simply put in the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Now, it will not be read today, but at some point in time, if it's not automatically deleted, I will hopefully get a chance to read it, but phone calls come first. By the way, when you do make the phone call, be sure to depress the number 1 button and you will get in line, because trust me, I don't know if it's due to what happened in Washington, D.C. If you weren't in the first hour, Mr. Fuller did address that. But anyway, the phone lines are jammed. That's the only thing I can say. So let me get out of the way so that you can ask your questions for Mr. Fuller. Please be brief, and we'll try to get in as many as we can. Let's go out to the 609. We're going to go to Sam out in Colorado. Sam, what is your question for Mr. Fuller, and good morning?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I don't have the book in front of me. I'm pretty sure this is what you wrote, Mr. Fuller, when someone asks, where are you from? You say, I'm from everywhere I've ever been and anywhere, and from everywhere I've never been. Is that correct?
That's correct. When people ask me where am I from, yes. I usually tell them I'm originally from Muskogee, Oklahoma, but within the codified context, I say the real truth. See, I've been taught that I was from just one place, but the truth is I'm from just like everybody else is from. I'm from every place I have ever been, and simultaneously, I am from every place that I have never been. And that's the truth.
I don't understand the second part.
And what's the part you don't understand? The first part?
You're from everywhere you're from everywhere you've never been?
Oh, that's the second part. Yes. The first part is I am from. Mm-hmm. This is the first part. I am from every place that I have ever been. You know, I'm from there. If I've been there, like if I go to the store and then I leave the store, I am from the store. I just left. 5 minutes ago. I'm no longer in the store, so I'm from the store because I was in the store 5 minutes ago. Okay? So I'm from the store. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, I'm also from every place I have never been. Now, I've been to the store, but no, if I'm no longer in the store, the minute I leave that store, I am from that store. I just walked out of the store. I'm not in the store, so I'm from the store. Now, I am also from Alaska. And they say, well, have you ever been to Alaska? No. They say, well, how can you be from Alaska? Because I've never been there. So I'm from it too. From, F-R-O-M. And that's the truth, if you want the truth. Now, if you want me to give you some type of fantasy answer, I'm not talking about you as a person. I'm giving an illustration. If I'm talking to any person, I'll say, well, I won't be telling the truth if I do that. I can give you that answer. But I am from every place I have ever been, and I'm from every place I have never been. Now, I'll give another example. Let's say that I am in Denver, Colorado, a place called Denver. Mm-hmm. And then I get on a bus and I leave a thing called a border saying I'm no longer in Denver. You're now leaving Denver. You're still in Colorado, but you're leaving Denver. Well, I'm from Denver. And I'm also from wherever I am at that moment. I'm from there too, because I'm there. So I'm from there. Because if I'm on a bus leaving there, the bus just turned left off of this particular highway onto a cutoff place or something like that, or a circle, or turn around. So every inch or every fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of an inch where that bus was and is no longer there, I'm from there too. They say, well, are you from Pueblo? Yeah, I'm from Pueblo. Well, hey, how can you be from Pueblo, Colorado, when you said you was from Denver, but you ain't even been in Pueblo, even though that's in Colorado. See, yeah, I'm from there too because I ain't been there, but I'm heading there. And when I get there, I'll be there. And then when I leave, I'll be leaving there. And another thing, every blade of grass here in Colorado, I'm from wherever that blade of grass is. And any other place on the planet, for that matter, not just in Colorado. You see the logic, or can you maybe, but that's what you call compensatory logic, which means I'm telling the truth. So I'm from, at all times, every place I have ever been, and I'm also from every place I have never been. Because somebody can ask me something about the town that I was born in, and I won't know what they're talking about. Why? I'm from that town. They say, well, you're from there, so you got to know about that. You don't know about things that are going on in the next room right now. You're from there. You're from the kitchen if you're in the living room. And when you go back into the kitchen, you're from the living room because you're now in the kitchen. You're only where you are at the time that you are there. Now, what is the value of this? It's to stop people from making a big to-do, historically and otherwise, about where they are from. It's not where you're from. It's what you are doing at the moment you are doing it. That's the only thing that counts. And you're either doing something constructive or you're doing something non-constructive. So we got to get out of all of this being wrapped up in our histories, because my history is what? According to the code. Everything that ever happened before the beginning of time and since. That's my history, and that is the truth. See, we need to be people who seek the truth. And the truth sometimes distorts or dumps completely a lot of things that have been drilled into our heads. My history is everything that has ever happened anywhere before the beginning of time and since. Why? Because that's the truth. That's why. They say, yeah, but you don't know about it. There's zillions of things I'll never know about. What's that got to do with anything? It's still my history. Every rock that ever turned over on the planet Venus, even though it happened 40 trillion years ago, that's my history. Why? Because it happened. I'm in the universe, and it's in the universe. So how can that not be my history? Say, well, you don't know nothing about that. So what? I don't know nothing about what happened 2 minutes ago down on the other block. I don't know how many beers that guy's having at that bar in Brooklyn right this minute, or what his name is, and what kind of socks he's wearing, or what kind of hat that lady's picking out in Fresno, California. But that's my history. Say, yeah, but Fuller, you don't know nothing about that. That's got nothing to do with it. It's still my history. How much history do you know? How much history does anybody know? You don't know any parts of your history. I mean, and most of the parts that you've been told are not true. Most of history is not true. Because the people who were there and were looking at it didn't get the whole story correctly. Because you got to get the whole story in order for that to be real history. And very seldom, as any detective will tell you, do people get the story just like it actually happened. simply because you don't know the story as it actually happened. You just know parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an old Bible saying that's what they call the Holy Bible. You only know in part, and you prophesy in part.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Sam from Colorado. Don't be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, for the what you just said and what you've been saying for the past hour or so, all can be found in parts of it. Well, no, all of it can be found in your publication. And I'm just going to take the time just for a moment for those of that are new to the program. Could you just give about 2 or 3 minutes to your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, so we can go ahead and answer these phone calls?
Yes. In some form or another, the basics of what I am saying here on the air is in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. And it's supposed to be starting with the truth in these textbooks. Truth meaning that which is. Tell it just like it is, not like you want it to be or like somebody thinks it is, but try to find out what a thing really is and then reveal it. That's what truth is. Truth is that which is, and that's even in the textbook, a definition for truth. That which is. That's a compensatory definition. That's not what you might call the conventional dictionary definition, but that's a different definition that I think reveals the truth. And so the things that I'm saying on this program are in the book in one form or another, or the concepts anyway. And that's part of the title. The book has many titles. That's something that's compensatory too, having a book that has many titles. And it's got at least 3 right here on the cover. But you can look all through the book and say everything in the book is a title, in a way of speaking. And in a way of speaking, to tell the truth, it is. But it's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, and it's a compensatory counter-racist code. Code meaning nothing secret. When you think about code, you think about secrecy. No, I'm not using the traditional way that code is written in most contexts. I'm using it within the context of this is a way of getting something done. Mm-hmm. And it's addressed to the individual. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Producejustice.com. Our focus today is on page 171 of that book that Mr. Fuller just talked about. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Using compensatory logic. Ask yourself, these are 4 basic questions. Look at page 171 for those of you who have the book. For those of you who do not have the book, you need to get the book and understand that question. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And how do you plan to do what it is you want to do? And most importantly, at the bottom is, when do you plan to do it? What is the constructive result? Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Gregory in the 516. Let me see, Gregory, if I can get you up here. Okay, Gregory from Florida. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you.
Morning.
My question for Mr. Fuller is, does he think that it would be possible for us to maintain a master list of the white supremacists now that they're kind of going into everything openly?
Do I think it's possible to do what?
Obtain a master list of the white supremacists.
Do what to white supremacy?
Obtain that master list so you know who they are now that they're exposing
master
themselves.
List.
Yes.
Master list.
Of their names and who they are.
Oh, to find out who they are.
Well, I'm just saying now that they're going into these buildings and you see the pictures and photos and everything, now can we put together a master list of who they are? You
who the white supremacists are?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's possible to find out who white supremacists are. I mean, because we're in a system of white supremacy. But what the code says, I'll just go by what is outlined in the textbook, and which is a correct way of going about doing things. I mean, you're not doing it. You're not harming people in a way that they should not be harmed. You're doing things in a logical manner, which is everything in the code is supposed to be logical. It's got no business in there, okay? So in a system of white supremacy where you don't have a list, and I don't have one, of who the white supremacists are, and another list of whom the white supremacists are not, by name and address, phone numbers, everything. I don't have that list. I don't know of anybody that does. Then that means that anybody in a system of white supremacy who is classified as white and who is able to be a white supremacist probably is one. You should suspect that they probably are one. That's just like a detective on a case. He doesn't know who committed the murder, but they say that, well, the person who did it, and maybe, 30 witnesses saw this, was and is still in the area and driving a green car. Now, you may not know what make the car was or what year and all like that, but the car was green. And in this particular town, in this particular area, everybody happens to know that there's only 2 green cars, okay, in that town. So if anybody in that town who was driving a green car, and it's just 2, they're the persons who may be pulled over and questioned once someone sees that green car. They say, I just saw a green car going by the window. That might be the person who did whatever that person did that should not have been done. So, a bunch of cars, they chase that green car down. And, the person driving the car is a little lady with 3 grandchildren in the car. And she's driving a green car. And they say, well, we suspected that somebody who's driving a green car, was climbing up on somebody's roof and hacked their way into the house and made off with some expensive items. And the lady who was in the car, driving the car, is 75 years old and got a couple of walking sticks in there that she absolutely needs to walk when she gets out of the car. So now, that's a green car, all right. But now the person in the car, well, you may have doubts about whether or not they were hacking their way into the roof of somebody's house and doing it with heavy equipment and made off with some expensive items. Now, the green car part, yeah. But now, you might have some doubts about whether this little lady did this job of breaking and entering. Now, it's the same way with the race issue. You take each individual, but generally speaking, you stop that green car. Now, green is a color. So you suspect every white person who is able to be a white supremacist is probably being one. Why? You got no other guide to go by. And that person will prove, well, hey, you think that I'm a racist, but I'm going to prove to you that I'm not. Now it comes down to this proof thing. Now, whom does that white person prove it to? You got to prove it to every black person who suspects you. Now, that's a hard job. Lots of black people on the planet. One black person says, oh, no, this person, I've known this person like forever. I've known this person since almost the day I was born. And he's white, but he definitely ain't no racist. That's one label you can't put on him. I know him. I know this guy. He lives right next door to me. Or he always has. And you talking about somebody who ain't no racist, he definitely ain't one. Now, that's a black person talking. about a white person. But according to the code, you know what the code says? Yeah, he proved it to you. But now he's got to start all over again and prove it to me. Why? Why is this? Because the code says that a refined white supremacist knows how to convince a few black people, non-white people, that they are not racist. He or she is not a racist. They are very skilled at that. And then they get that black person to vouch for them as being non-racist. And the code says you never trust that, because the system of white supremacy is full of white people who know how to convince a handful of non-white people that they are non-racist. And then they use them all the time to vouch for them as not being racist when they are archly refined racists. That's the highly skilled racist, the one who is highly trained to do just that. So the code says, no, you saying that this person is not a racist means absolutely nothing to me, because he or she has to prove to me that he or she is not a racist. And I have to be convinced by them directly, not through you, not through another non-white person or any other person, white or non-white. No, you got to prove it to me. Why? Is this the just thing to do? Because it's the only thing that you can do, according to the code, that will really work on account of the refinement of racism. The refined racist is extremely skilled, and you got to take that into account.
All righty. Thank you, Gregory from Florida. Do not be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, I'd like you to answer this one quickly here. Let me see. Okay, quickly here. This comes from South Africa. Comes from Angola. So he just says this, Mr. Fuller, I've noticed or been observing that the sun has been blocked by the sun for the majority of 2021 over here in South Africa. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, yes, I have thoughts now on it, and that is the sun is being blocked. And what that means, well, the code says nothing has meaning unless it has meaning, if you get what I mean. That statement is in the code book.
Okay.
The original code book.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the 424. That's Christopher. Christopher, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Barbie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, my question is very simple. I just want to qualify. I'm kind of fairly new to the show, and I do appreciate the knowledge and information that you kick. I just want to give you your flowers now on that. I kind of missed out on Dr. Course Welshing before she passed. I just kind of got hip to her. But my question is, I understand the terms of using constructive. But my question is to you, instead of using non-constructive, why not destructive? I know they do mean the same. They're both are not constructive. But to me, destructive kind of hit a little harder. What say you?
Code says, if you think that works best, here again, every word is a tool. If you think that tool works best for you to produce the most constructive result, use it. That's what I say, because the code requires me to say that. Whatever tool works best, that does what? produces a constructive result according to your intentions. If that's the result, if it produces a constructive result, use it. Use the word destructive rather than non-constructive. I use them interchangeably. If it's non-constructive, it's destructive. At the moment, anyway.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Thank you, Christopher. And don't be a stranger. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Let me do this right now so we can go straight through. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And if you would have any questions or want to join the conversation quickly, you can do that by calling 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. If you elect to call, and many are on the line, make sure that you depress the number 1 button and you will get in line. Hopefully, I will be able to get to you and then we can proceed. So that's the number you call, 516-453-9921, to be able to get in, and I will try to get as many in as I can. Thank you. Let's do this before we go to the phone line. This comes from Edward. He says this, Mr. Fuller. So could you ask Mr. Fuller his thoughts on the D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser calling the storming of the Capitol by Trump supporters, quote, a dark day, end of quote. Thank you.
Well, the code says, because I do not address individual under VGQ, Mayor Bowser can say whatever it is she wants to say about race, racism, and counter-racism, and I am not supposed to critique it other than to say what the code says. She said what she said. But what the code book says, be careful and be alert to how the word dark is used. And I hear a whole lot of people, because I've been monitoring that recently, and for some strange reason, a lot of people are using, white people and non-white people, are using the word dark just like the word black used to be used. And people, but we made black not a non-constructive word. We said that black is black and it's acceptable. And it is a word that fits the lots of things, and the color of a person's skin is not something that is non-constructive. Black, brown, there's nothing non-constructive about these words when applied to the color of someone's skin. Nothing non-constructive about it. So the white supremacists married the word dark or black, both of them, as evil. The word dark is usually associated with evil. So black is dark. They're almost interchangeable. The color of the person's skin is dark if it's black. So when you say darkness, drive out the darkness and bring in the light. People do that all the time. You should think about what they're saying. There's nothing incorrect about darkness. Most of the universe is dark. They even have blackness that is darker than dark, called black holes. So I've read in the last 10 years or so, that there's something out there called black holes. Well, where are these black holes located? In the center of a lot of whiteness? No. The black holes are inside of other black holes. And black into where? Something blacker than black. Well, how can it be blacker than black? Well, it just is. Dark. and darker. But the white supremacists has taken everything that's associated with D-A-R-K, a four-letter word, and made it a four-letter word. And so black people and white people still use it in that way. Oh, that's evil. If it's dark, it's evil. You say, well, hey, what about what they call nightfall? You say night is associated with darkness, then you say it fell. Night fell? How can the night fall? Well, hey, that sounds like something where, hurtful. It's, it's getting dark. In a little while, you're going to have nightfall because it's getting dark. The night is going to fall. What? It's going to fall 2 feet or what? 25,000 feet? It's going to fall on me? Oh, I'm going to get hurt when night falls. I better get inside and put my blanket over my head. Because the night is going to fall. See how the white supremacists do? Boy, these word tricks go into our minds when we are 3 and 5 and 6, 7 years old. And the next thing you know, I'm black myself, but I can't stand nothing dark. If it's dark, it's evil. Halloween is about what? Oh, the dark. The dark. Oh, the hobgoblins are all dark. Nightfall and darkness creeps in. Oh, and you got those dark bats flying around in the air. And the bats are dark. And the night that they're flying around in, that's dark. And woo, what's out there? The boogeyman. The bogeyman. B-O-G-E-Y. And it's dark. Oh, dark. It's in the textbook. It warns people in the Compensatory Code 2016 and the 1984 edition and all through. And then the word guide, it talks about dark. And beware of how people use that word. Dark. Oh, these are dark times. What do you mean dark times? 9/11 was a day of darkness for the whole world. And you look at photographs of what was happening in New York City on 9/11, 2001, September the 11th, 2001. And there wasn't anything dark about that day. That's why the pilots of those planes found those buildings. If it had been dark, they might have missed them and wound up in the Atlantic Ocean. Boy, they knew it. They wanted a clear day. Apparently, according to the evidence, they made sure we ain't going up on no foggy day. Foggy, is kind of dark. Fog is gray. But if you're trying to see, and definitely not at night. Hey, we're going to take off at night in a plane. We're going to seize the plane and then try to find some towers in the dark. Say, well, the towers probably got lights on them. Say, yeah, we can see a whole lot better if we got a whole lot of sunshine, which apparently, logically speaking, they picked that type of day. They called it a clear day. But at the same time, the newspaper said it was a dark day. Wasn't nothing about a dark day in New York City. It might have been dark someplace else, but not in New York City when those Twin Towers came down. But watch that word. That's what I want to harp on. The way the word is used now. They're talking about this as a dark era, and we're going through some dark times. Time is dark? Well, it might be, but Hey, what's the opposite of dark times? Going through some white times? Or are we going through some light times? Drive out the darkness. Bring in the light. Drive out those dark people wherever you see them. Regentrify. Gentrify? Yeah, make everything gentle. Yeah. I mean, everything is wild with those people around, those dark people. So we're going to gentrify. Going to make everything nice and neat and gentle. Oh, because we are gentle men and gentle women, not those wild heathens walking around with all that wild hair. Everything about them is wild, and everything about them is foul, because they are what? Dark people. Boogeyman. Halloween. Scary.
Okay. All righty. All right. Thank you again, Mr. Fuller. Before we go on here, here's a question from, let's see here. Who is this? Oh, from Cleophas. Says this, my question to you, Mr. Fuller, is to ask whether anyone has ever referred to you as a philosopher, poet, / spoken word artist, and comedian. Of course, you're first and foremost a tactician, a strategist, which I'm sure comes from your military background and training. But I think you also could have been great as a thinking man's comedian or even a spoken word artist, which is like a poet or rapper. I know you said you stopped following music past the 1950s or early 60s because the lyrics became more difficult to decipher. That rap is too complex for your comprehension, and though I'm not you or in your head per se, I tend to disagree based on how quick-witted and sharp your mind remains as I listen to you every week. I believe you sell yourself short, Mr. Fuller, on that front. I know because I'm a poet and lyricist, have comedians in my family, and usually I can identify those traits in someone who has that ability. That's all. Just thought I'd inquire. If you have any thoughts, you could let me know. Otherwise, thank you very much. I appreciate your response, whatever that may be. That is from Cleophas. Before I get to the call, did you have a thought on that, Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Okay.
I have an identity that I put out there myself. I might be a number of things, but it's one thing that I am absolutely certain of, and that is, and I put it on the back of the book when I introduce myself as an author. I say, well, what do I say here? I'm looking at it right now. Writer, author of this book, have been, like millions of others, a long time, and here it is. If I was on a witness stand right now and I gave my actual identity, my title, rather than my name that was given to me by the white supremacists, directly, indirectly, but my major title, the whole time I've been on this planet, and even when I was in my mother's womb, and even before then, being conceived, I am what? Victim of white supremacy. If I was testifying right now and the judge told me do I have any synonyms or pseudonyms, and any names to go along with my name of Neely Fuller Jr., the name I've been given, do I have any other titles and whatnot? Yes, Your Honor, it is victim of white supremacy. I am more of that than I have ever been anything, and considering all things logically, I'll die that. Victim of white supremacy. That is what I am, more than I am anything else that I can think of. Telling the truth.
Okay, we've got 20 minutes left in the show. Let's go to the 443, and let's see, wait a minute. And we have Nicole from Maryland. Go ahead, Nicole. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? Good morning.
Habar Gandhi, first off, it is an honor to be able to talk to an elder. And then my statement is a manifestation, how to enhance that. Example, I was holding a charger box to plug in and a device, and before I even plugged it into the outlet, the power surge went to the device. And then I want to know, where can I find the late Dr. Wilson video of the ISIS papers, if that is what it is called, when she was explaining the pool table and how guns was made compared to black penises. And then P.S., I look forward to buying your book and working through it to help control emotions to be able to proceed on the tree of life.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, if you could decipher that one. I think it was
well,
Dr. Wilson.
I think Dr. Wilson's book is available in some bookstores. I think there's one bookstore or two bookstores that may have it for sure. Esowon bookstore in Los Angeles, if you're anywhere on the West Coast. That's ESOWON. And then there's a bookstore in Baltimore that I'm familiar with. Of course, I apologize for not knowing a lot of the bookstores. I just know of two that really stand out. And the second one, if they're still in business, African World Books. That's AFRIKAN, not CAN. African World Books in Baltimore, Maryland, Pennsylvania Avenue, in Baltimore. Now, if they're still in business, and I think they are, they may have the ISIS papers. A very important book, so people have told me. I've read Dr. Wilson's Crest Confrontation. It's a very thin book that's out there, but she doesn't go into much detail about a lot of things as she does in the ISIS papers. I've read her Crest theory of color confrontation, but I have not read the ISIS papers. But I understand that she makes a lot of analogies to all the ball games and the game of chess. Sometimes when I was talking to her, I would always call it Crest Chess because her name is Frances Crest Welsing. Last name is Wilson. And a lot of people said that she must have been married to some Dutchman or something, some white man. I've heard that. But that's not true. I want to say that to the entire world. No, she has that name, but she was, quote, unquote, married to an African who had that name, Welsing. And her maiden name is Cress, C-R-E-S-S. So we used to talk about, in a sort of a joking fashion, when she would talk about different things, like the ball games. And I first put, I think, the idea in her mind about ball games, period, because the only one that I referred to her is the pool game. The white ball in pool is the dominant ball. It knocks all the colored balls up under the table. And the table is green, anybody who's familiar with pool. So it's like knocking all the people of color up under the ground when they go in the side pocket and the end pocket and all that. An excellent movie about pool, you might say, that's got a lot of lessons in it other than pool, is The Hustler, starring Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason, yeah.
Yes, and Paul Newman. Excellent movie. It's on my movie list. It's got a lot of lessons in it, not just about pool, but just lessons about people, okay? But what Dr. Wilson is talking about, all of the ball games, the big brown balls, she calls them, in basketball. That's why, it is all under the control of the white supremacists. I mean, and the big brown ball goes into the white basket, the white net, they call it. That's the goal. Direct those big brown balls, with that real powerful black person bouncing his big brown balls down the court and slamming it into the white net. All right, all kind of analogies that, And she talks about the cigarettes, from what I understand. I've heard her talk. I haven't read the ISIS papers, but I've heard in her speeches talking about the cigar, big, long, brown, okay, and that has real status. And then you got the white thing called a cigarette. Not a cigar, a cigarette. Cigarette is the effeminate part. And it's smaller, okay? And it's got a little fire on the end, just like the big black cigar. But cigarette is kind of weak. And the connotation within the sexual thing, the derogatory words they used to call cigarettes what? According to Dr. Wilson and according to what I know. Fag. Give me a fag, man. Give me a drag on that fag. Small, fire on the end. What is a phallus? It's either big or it's small. And if it's white, it's a cigarette with a little fire on the end. If it's big and black, it's huge, and it connotes a whole lot of power, and it got a lot of fire on the end, and a whole lot of smoke. But Dr. Wilson talks about this in the ISIS papers, so I understand. I haven't read the book. I have copies, but I haven't read the book. I've heard so many of her speeches.
Yes. Okay.
But they're very interesting. And you can probably get them at the places where I name, or on the internet. I don't know. No one has told me.
Okay.
I'll put it out there if somebody tells me.
Okay.
Some other places.
Thank you, Nicole from Maryland, for your call, and don't be a stranger. Let's do this. See, we've got about 12 minutes, and we got Tony, and then hopefully we can get the lightning. Let me see. Tony from Georgia. Let's see if I can get you in here. Okay, there you go. Tony, good morning, and go ahead. Good morning. Tony? Hello? Going once, twice? Excuse me. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm getting all confused here. Let me do this. How about Bernadette from Canada? How about that? Bernadette? Hello? Bernadette from Canada, are you on? Hello? The connection is not too good here. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah,
I
go
hear
ahead.
you.
Okay, go ahead now.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Bobby, and thank you, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. It's an honor asking you this question and speaking with you today. I've been really hoping for this moment for a really long time. And I also have your first book on the United Compensatory book. And I'm looking forward to acquiring your companion book, which is for the Word Guide. So the question I have is this, because I noticed that during the domestic terrorism incident last week, that there was a lot of participants, white people, suspected white supremacists, who have since been found to be either active or ex-military, active and or ex-police officers involved. And the news outlets are reporting this. So it's quite interesting how the narrative is being spun, that these are just good Americans being manipulated. And this is where it leads to my question on good, because I know that there really isn't a definition as to what it is to be American. So what I've found when I was looking further into the question of definition of good, I found that it under the white supremacy racism terms, it seems to be good is absolute, and good only refers to white people, regardless of attributes. Just as long as they're white, they're considered good, and then bad, regardless of the non-white is doing bad attributes or not. They are regarded as bad regardless. And there's different set of protocols according to that. And I was just wondering, have you found similar in that in your research over the period that you've dealt with racism, white supremacy, and trying to understand it more? Thank you, and let me.
Oh, well, it seems like a very, very, very long question, so I lost the essence of the question. But if I understand the question, racism is the dominant government of the entire planet. There is no real government other than that, because the system of white supremacy cancels out all so-called governments. People walk around and say that we have this type of government and that type of government, and this is my country, or this is my government, and this is my tribe, and this is my this, and this is my that. And the white supremacist says, all of you belong to me if you got color in your skin, and you come under me. I don't care where you are or what you call yourself. You're nothing to me other than one of my victims. And I'll prove it to you in less than 2 minutes if you believe otherwise, because I have power over you if you have color in your skin. You don't have any real power. And so far, the white supremacists have proven when they say that, they don't say it openly like that. Most of them don't. Most of them are refined. A few of them will say it outright. But they're telling the truth. They're not making that up. Anybody who takes them on has failed. Has failed. The white supremacist says, nobody's beat me. Nobody. There are people who will say, well, we did at one time. No, you, somebody that you knew, that you heard about, put on a temporary show. They didn't actually beat the white supremacists. Why? Because the white supremacists are still the greatest business that the world has ever known. They're still in business. And everybody comes in second. So you're talking about battles. You're not talking about the war. Yes, dark-skinned people have won some battles. But a battle is not a war. It's a small war. It's a part of a war. But that's a smaller part. A battle is a part of a war. The white supremacists have won the war so far. And every person with color in his or her skin in the known universe is a prisoner of war. And so if you put that picture in your mind, if you have color in your skin, you're a prisoner of war, an illegitimate prisoner of war, because it's an illegitimate war. But if you have color in your skin in 2021, the year 2021, and you're anywhere in the known universe, you are subject to prison masters and in a prison called the system of white supremacy. That's the name of the prison you're in, like it or not. According to what? Neely Fuller? No. According to logic and evidence.
Okay. All right, Bernadette from Canada, do not be a stranger. This is going to be the last call. We got about 5 minutes, Mr. Fuller. Let's go to wait a minute, here we go. Lightning from Lynette, Alabama. Go ahead, Lightning.
Hey, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller, how are you all today?
Good, sir.
Still learning.
Oh, I love that. I would like to give a VGQ and a question. My VGQ is for anyone that's listening to this radio station that if you're confused about what happened last Wednesday, then the statement is if you don't understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything that happened last Wednesday and so far on is going to serve to confuse you. My question is, Mr. Fuller, with the white supremacists letting their soldiers come out in the open, i.e. the oath keepers, have the status for black people gotten worse with that just happened last Wednesday?
Well, the status of black people have always gotten worse because there's been no improvement. That's just my view according to the code. Improvement on something that never should have existed means the thing that does exist that shouldn't have existed is gone. That's the only way you measure improvement. Down through the years, I kept hearing this term, improvement, progress. There's been no progress against a system that never should have been. They say, well, we're working on it. We're trying to get rid of it and replace it with something better. Presumably, that something better would be justice, since racism is about non-justice. But there's been no progress. It's an either-or thing. You either have justice or you don't. There's no such thing as, well, we got a little bit of justice. No such thing as a little bit of justice. You either have it or you don't in every area of activity. And if you have non-justice anywhere, you got non-justice everywhere. I think Martin Luther King Jr. kind of alluded to that in a different way. But it means the same thing, I think. Since he didn't explain it, I don't think what he meant by that. But it rang that bell with me, and I'd been thinking about it long before I heard him say it. But there's no such thing as a little bit of justice. You either have it or you don't. So when we use that term progress, none has been made. Zero. If anybody asks you, according to the code, well, on this racial thing, has any progress been made in the last 15 years? The answer is no. Why? Because you have a system that never should have existed in the first place. And progress is measured only by when justice has replaced that system, not one fraction of a second before.
Okay. Lightning, thank you for your call. Appreciate it, brother. Do not be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, we have about a minute. I know we talked about your book that you can get at producejustice.com, but I'm going to give you that minute to go ahead and say what you need to say in our remaining time that we have here.
Yes, go to producejustice.com and order the textbook for victims of white supremacy. It's at that website, producejustice.com. And also, for 2021 and forward, for this entire decade, the position that I'm taking for what I see, and I don't like to make predictions, so I won't make any, but I'm saying black people should expect, just prepare for, don't be surprised if everything keeps getting uglier and uglier and uglier from now until up to 7 years from now and maybe the entire decade.
Wow.
And it may not work out that way, but I think that's the way it's headed according to some of the indications.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Thank you, chat room. Thank you, emailers. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Moon Pie. Just thank everybody for your participation in today's show. We will try to get better next week. So thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, thank you.
And thank everybody.
All righty.